Hello and welcome back to the Last Word on Spurs for yet another opposition preview. Thank you so much for joining us, as always, for these opposition previews. We've done quite a number of them already this season. Like I say, people really enjoying the content, so thank you so much for all your support. Delighted to be joined once again by the great Philip King. Phil joined us a couple of weeks ago for the reverse of this fixture, of course, for the away leg. Away tie. Phil, firstly, how are you? Well?
Yeah, all good, Ricky. And thanks again for the invitation. Always a pleasure to be on your show.
Oh, listen, pleasure's all ours, Phil. Like I say, I hope people really enjoyed the breakdown the last time you was on. So really keen to get your thoughts on how this plays out, of course, for the second game we obviously face Frankfurt now in the group. To be fair, I mean, it's one of those where, Phil, for that, obviously, first game that we previewed, much was made of the 0-0 against Frankfurt. Some felt that they were disappointed by maybe how Spurs, to some degree, approached it. We were lacking, of course, the final ball. But ultimately, I still feel any point away in Europe is a good result. How did you see the result out in Germany?
From a Spurs perspective, I saw it as a good point in the end. I think before the game, I kind of had said that if we played a three in midfield, then we'd win the game, and if we didn't, then we'd probably draw or lose the game. In the end, I was actually quite happy, or even, let's say, slightly surprised by Spurs. Obviously coming on from the North London derby, because I thought we approached the game, with a lot of energy, a lot of pressing, and certainly the first half was fantastic. And obviously, yeah, with a bit of, if Kane's got his shooting boots on, if Son, curls that in, which he normally does, then you're leading probably 2-3-0, right? And then I would say in the second half, you're just going to take it home. As it was, the second half, wasn't quite as good, I thought, as the first half. Frankfurt had actually a couple of good chances in the end. Frankfurt probably should have taken at least one of them, right? Really, they had one chance where they were clear through on goal. They had a follow-up shot, I seem to remember, as well. So I think for Spurs it was a good point in the end, especially after coming off the North London derby. And from Eintracht's perspective, here in Frankfurt, to be honest, I think most people were very happy with the point as well, because they saw the quality that Spurs have got right in the team. They see Kane and Son lining up. They overall, I think the feeling here in Frankfurt was also quite satisfied with the point, but maybe with a slight feeling that they were lucky to still be in it at halftime, but they could have pinched something as well in the second half. But let's be honest, the game wasn't the greatest game from as a spectacle, right? We were hoping for a few goals before the game, and certainly the atmosphere in Frankfurt here was great, with all the Spurs fans, and I think everyone was looking forward to a bit more of a backwards forwards kind of game. And I mean, a goal would have changed it, right? If there'd been one goal, then I think the other team would have started chasing, and it would have opened up the game. But I think for both teams in the end, a point was a good result, and they can both look on to the rest of the group now.
You'd say, putting out Phil, Spurs in a position where they win their next two respective Champions League home games, they're all but home and hosed. And obviously with Conte's record in Europe, I think it's widely known it's not the greatest. I think for Spurs to be in that position now where if they can accumulate 6 points out of 6, they are nearly there. Just intrigued to see what you feel of how Frankfurt have handled things domestically since facing Spurs, and the kind of side Tottenham are going to be facing at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Wednesday.
Yeah, well, I think the interesting thing is coming off that point, and bearing in mind that Frankfurt had beaten Union Berlin, who are still top of the league, right? The weekend before, quite convincingly. I think Eintracht would have gone into this last weekend gone now, feeling quite confident and hoping to be able to, to pick up another 3 points. Eintracht played away against Bochum on Saturday, and Bochum are actually bottom of the table, and they got promoted, I think, last season, so they're a promoted team as well, but they're rooted to the bottom of the table. And I mean, long story short, it was an absolute disaster showing from Eintracht. They certainly put in their worst performance of the season, and probably one of the worst performances under the manager since joining, 18 months ago. Like, it was an absolute shocker. They lost 3-0. And look, I mean, I think the manager as well, like, to his credit, he took a bit of responsibility after the game, because he changed things completely for the game. I think in his mind, he wanted to obviously rest some of the players, for the Spurs game now this week. He completely changed the system. So he went from, 3 at the back, or, the 3-5-2, 5-3-2, whatever, to a back four, actually. So he completely changed it. He dropped, or he rested Kamada, who was not Kamada, Hasabi, who was the guy who actually marshaled Kane arguably quite well, in the first game. He's the 38-year-old Japanese ex-captain of the national team, and he dropped him, and I think that caused complete chaos in the defence. Nothing worked. He played a midfielder as a right back. So, the manager kind of tried maybe to be a bit too clever, I think, at the weekend, and it didn't work. Having said that, if you look at the team that was out there, they still had a lot of quality on the pitch, and a lot of fans, I think, since Saturday have been on social media here in Frankfurt, in Germany, being very critical of the team. Of the mentality shown, of the work rate shown. Götze obviously came back for the game. He missed our game right in the week with injury. He came back, so he'll be pushing for a starting spot on Wednesday. But he wasn't particularly good, to be honest. The game passed him by. He was subbed off, I think, after 55 minutes, something like that. So, long story short, Eintracht, to be honest, they're not coming into the return leg now with the best, kind of feeling in the background. But I guess on the other hand, as I said, they rested quite a few players, and I would expect now the team that will line up on Wednesday should be near enough the same team that played against Spurs last week. So I'd expect Hasabi to come back into defence. He'll go back to a back three. He'll play the same defenders. He'll bring Kamada, the other Japanese attacking midfielder, into the game, who Spurs who we managed to actually marshal quite well, I think, in the first game. And that's key for us being successful against them. And I would assume that the French striker Muani, who was also quite, I would say, he didn't really find himself into the Spurs game, right? He didn't really show off what he can do. He wasn't in the game at all. He'll be back because he was suspended the weekend. So, again, long story short, I expect the same starting 11, maybe with Götze coming in instead of Lindstrom, the Danish player, who's actually a very, very big talent. But I think Eintracht are gonna come into this game, obviously feeling quite confident again, but it's going to be a completely different game to in Germany, I think. And I think Frankfurt are going to be actually quite nervous, I think, about the game this week.
Just wondering, Phil, I say, from the perspective where how Frankfurt will approach this one. Spurs are in a position where I think the crowd will, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, there's going to be an expectancy for Tottenham to take the game to Frankfurt, because, as Conte has kind of alluded to after the game against Brighton, he wants the stadium to really come together as one, and Spurs to create an atmosphere there where really it's going to be an intimidating place for the opposition. You'd probably argue similar to what Frankfurt did to Spurs, arguably, in their stadium. I just wonder how much you feel that's going to impact the game. I mean, listen, the stadium's always noisy on Champions League nights, but Conte has called for that to be like a cauldron on Wednesday. How do you expect that to play into the actual game itself?
I mean, I would imagine that, the Spurs will start the game actually on the front foot. Quite similar, to be honest.
We haven't said too often this season, apart from Brighton, really, right?
Yeah, I know. You're never quite sure, right? But I mean, let's be honest, right? The game of the weekend against Brighton. I mean, the first 25 minutes, first half an hour, I mean, we took the game to them. We wanted the ball and we tried to make things happen. And I was obviously kind of saying, well, it's because of the the three in midfield. That's kind of like the magic solution. But to be fair, I think that helped. But Spurs, we really took the game and said, let's try and make something happen at the beginning of the game. We scored the goal, right? So it worked, at that point. And then I guess for the rest of the game, we kind of played more classical Conte ball. And we're just a bit more defensive when trying to hit on the break. I think on Wednesday, I think we're actually going to try and be progressive. I can't see us, sitting back in letting them have the ball. I can't see that happening at home under the lights, against the team that we've kind of got to know now from the first game. I can't see that happening. I think Spurs are going to, probably still play with the 3-4-3. I guess he's not going to play with three in midfield. Probably just be Bentancur and Højbjerg again, I would imagine, and just try and take the game to them at the beginning and try and get an early goal. I think that's what we'll try and do. And again, in the second half, it was a bit of a shame because in the first game, I honestly thought that Spurs would actually counter a bit more, in Frankfurt last week in the second half, because generally speaking, the other team will take a bit more risk. The thing is, this time Frankfurt need something, right? They need to get something in London. They need to get something in North London. If they lose, I mean, it's basically game over in the group, really. I would say, similarly from a Spurs perspective, if we win this game, and I guess if we win the other home game, then we're through, right? That's the reality. So Frankfurt need to get something. So I can see Spurs, really taking the game to Frankfurt, trying to get an early goal, and then sitting a bit more back, but not too much. And in the second half, really hitting on the counter again, So I think, to be honest, I think Frankfurt are going to find it very difficult on Wednesday. I think their chance was last week at home, especially after the North London derby, kind of coming off that game, really to make a bit of a statement against Spurs and try and get the 3 points. I really can't see Frankfurt having a real chance of the win this week, to be honest. So I think Spurs are going to really approach the game positively, and Frankfurt will try and play a bit more careful. I think they'll try and, kind of, get those midfielders in there, try and keep it as tight as possible. And with the French striker up front, who, he's big and he's fast. I think they'll kind of hope that they can maybe get something through to him, or maybe punish us on set pieces. Try and get crosses in, try and get something like that. I can't see Frankfurt getting too much joy against us, against Spurs, through open play, to be honest.
Phil, listen, thank you as always. Always an excellent breakdown. Last question I've got to ask you. Prediction for the game?
My prediction is actually clearly going to be I'm going to go for 3-1 Spurs.
3-1 Spurs. Phil,
3-1 Spurs. Spurs conceding from a free kick, I think, and Kane double and a Sonny goal as well. Very easy.
Phil, it's almost like it's scripted. Thank you so much. Just a reminder, where can people find wonderful work you provide? Phil, where can we find you across the socials? Yeah,
I'm on Twitter mainly nowadays under at Frankfurt Spurs. And I think, as I mentioned last week, I've got a small channel on YouTube under the same name as well, at Frankfurt Spurs, which I'm kind of building up. But yeah, happy to connect, obviously, with any fellow fans, whether they be Spurs or Eintracht.
Absolutely. Phil, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Last one, Spurs. There you go, guys. That is once again a great opposition preview, the breakdown by Philip King, the Frankfurt Spurs. As always, guys, hope you enjoy it, and we're back with you on Wednesday evening for instant post-match reaction. Thank you so much, as always. Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Ricky. Cheers, guys. Bye.